Hello, and welcome back to Resilient Walk. If you found your way here today, perhaps you're in a place where something feels unfinished, where words you've spoken seem to hang in the air, or where moments you treasured feel like they're slipping through your fingers like sand. Before we begin our journey together, if these words find you in a quiet moment of recognition, feel free to like this video and join our gentle community by subscribing. And in the comments below, I'd love to hear about one small thing that brought you peace today, perhaps the sound of rain, a warm cup of tea, or simply the gift of this present moment. Now, settle in. Close your eyes if you wish. Let's travel together to a hidden valley, where an old bell tower stands against the evening sky, and where a keeper of echoes is about to learn something that will change everything. In a valley cupped between gentle mountains, there lived an old man named Joe who tended the village bell tower. For 40 years, he had climbed those winding stone steps each evening as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. Joe believed deeply in the power of sound. Each toll of the bell, he thought, carried the prayers and hopes of his people out into the world, where they would echo forever, bouncing off mountainsides, traveling through forests, reaching the ears of God himself. But as the years passed, something began to trouble Joe deeply. He would stand at his kitchen window in the early morning, listening, and he noticed that the echoes from the night before were growing fainter. The sound that had once bounced back to him clear and strong now returned as barely a whisper. He would press his weathered hands against the cool glass, straining to hear what remained of yesterday's prayers. But there was only the soft rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of the stream, and the settling silence of a world that seemed to be swallowing up all the beautiful sounds he had so carefully sent out into it. Joe began to panic. If the echoes were fading, did that mean the prayers were lost? Did it mean that all those years of faithful service, all those moments of hope he had launched into the sky, were disappearing as if they had never been? He started ringing the bell harder, longer, with a desperation that made his shoulders ache and his hands bleed. But still, the echoes grew weaker with each passing day. Still, the silence seemed to be winning. One autumn evening, as the first frost kissed the valley, Joe climbed the tower with tears in his eyes. His body was tired from months of fighting against the fading. His heart was heavy with the fear that everything he had done, everything he had believed in, was slowly being erased. He reached the top just as the last light was draining from the sky. The air was sharp and clean, carrying the scent of wood smoke and dying leaves. Below him, the village windows glowed like fireflies, each one holding a family, a story, a set of hopes that he had tried so hard to carry skyward. That night, Joe pulled the rope with everything he had. The bronze bell sang out across the valley, a sound so pure and strong it seemed to crack the very air. He held his breath, waiting, listening with every fiber of his being for the echo to return. And it did. Faint, distant, but there. But then, as he listened, Joe heard something that changed everything. He heard the echo dying. Note by note, breath by breath, it grew softer, thinner, until it was absorbed completely by the patient darkness. In that moment, Joe felt something break inside his chest. Not just disappointment, but a profound grief for all the echoes that had faded before this one. For all the prayers that had dissolved into silence. For all the beauty that seemed to vanish as if it had never existed at all. He sank to his knees on the cold stone floor, his hands still gripping the rope, and whispered into the silence, what was it all for? And in that moment of deepest questioning, something extraordinary happened. As Joe knelt there in his despair, he began to truly listen. Not for the echoes of his bell, but to the world itself. He heard the soft breathing of sleeping children in the houses below. He heard the gentle creaking of trees in the night breeze. He heard the whisper of his own heartbeat, steady and strong despite his tears. And then Joe understood something that took his breath away. The echo of the bell had faded, yes, but the bell itself, the moment of its ringing, the pure intention behind it, that was not lost. It was transformed. The sound waves had traveled outward, carrying with them not just noise, but the love behind the noise. They had touched the face of a woman walking home from market, making her look up at the stars. They had reached the ears of a child afraid of the dark, giving her something beautiful to focus on instead of her fear. The echo that returned to Joe was never the true measure of the bell's impact. It was only the sound that had nowhere else to go, the prayer that had completed its purpose and was coming home to rest. Joe rose slowly to his feet, his knees creaking like old hinges, his heart suddenly light as air. He looked out over his valley and saw it differently now. He saw that every kind word ever spoken in those glowing houses, every gentle touch, every moment of love, they didn't need to echo back to prove their worth. They lived on in ways he couldn't hear or measure. In the way a mother hummed to her baby. In the way a father's patience taught his son to be gentle with others. In the way neighbors helped neighbors, creating ripples of kindness that traveled farther than any sound ever could. The fading of an echo, Joe realized, was not the death of its purpose. It was the completion of it. From that night forward, Joe continued to ring his bell each evening. But now he rang it differently. Not harder, not longer, but with a deep peace that seemed to make the sound itself more beautiful. He no longer pressed his ear to his kitchen window the next morning, straining to catch the fading echoes. Instead, he would step outside and breathe in the morning air, feeling grateful for the night that had passed, for the prayers that had been carried, for the silence that meant his work was done. Joe began to see echoes everywhere, not the kind that bounced back to him, but the kind that lived on in ways he could never fully know. The way his faithfulness had inspired the young apprentice who sometimes helped him. The way the evening bell had become a signal for families to gather, for lovers to pause and appreciate the beauty of the moment, and for the elderly to feel connected to something larger than themselves. He realized that he himself was an echo, the fading whisper of his father's kindness, his mother's wisdom, his teacher's patience. And someday, he would fade too. But the love he had poured into his work, the devotion he had offered to his community, the gentle way he attended to something sacred, these would ripple forward in ways he could never imagine. Joe's shoulders no longer ached from pulling the rope. His hands no longer bled from gripping it too tightly. He rang the bell with the touch of someone who understood that his job was not to control where the sound went or how long it lasted, but simply to offer it with love and let it find its own way home. And in the evenings, as the last note faded into the patient darkness, Joe would smile. Not because he could hear it echoing back to him, but because he could feel it joining the great symphony of all the love that had ever been offered and received, even when, especially when, no one was listening for the echo. Perhaps you, like Joe, have been listening for echoes. Perhaps you've spoken words of love that seemed to disappear into silence. Perhaps you've offered kindness that felt unnoticed, or poured your heart into something that the world seemed to forget. But what if I told you that the most beautiful things we do are not measured by the echoes they send back to us? What if the words you spoke in tenderness to someone who was hurting are still rippling through their life in ways you'll never know? What if the patience you showed, the forgiveness you offered, the simple act of showing up when it mattered? What if these are creating echoes that will outlast any sound your ears could ever catch? The fading of an echo is not the failure of your love. It is the success of it. It means your kindness has found a home somewhere beyond your ability to track it. It means your prayers have been transformed into something more beautiful than sound. They have become part of the fabric of healing in this world. Today, as you move through your life, I invite you to ring your own bell with the same gentle confidence that Joe found. Speak your words of love not because you need to hear them echoed back, but because they deserve to exist. Offer your kindness not because you need proof of its impact, but because this moment, right now, is worthy of your best. The echoes will fade. They always do. But the love behind them joins something eternal, something that needs no sound to prove its existence. May you find peace in the fading of your echoes. May you trust in the ripples you cannot see. And may you ring your bell each day with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that love never truly disappears. It just travels beyond the reach of listening ears, into the place where all beautiful things eventually find their perfect home. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. If these words brought you even a moment of peace, please share this video with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, in a world full of noise, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is trust the silence that follows your love. Be well and rest easy.